the most underrated wine region in France, the Left Bank and the Right Bank of Bordeaux, and an alternative to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. This week, it's all about French wine.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is where food and travel meet on the Destination Eat Drink website, on the Destination Eat Drink YouTube channel, and here on the Destination Eat Drink podcast. And this week, we're talking French wine with wine expert Erwan Leo from The Secret Wine Door. But first, if you like Destination Eat Drink, please share the podcast with your friends. It really helps to get the word out. And if you really like the show, please consider a one-time or recurring contribution in any amount at buymeacoffee.com/Destination Eat Drink. And thank you very, very much. Erwan Leo is a wine expert from Paris whose unique shop, The Secret Wine Door, offers wine, cheese, and charcuterie tastings to visitors thirsty to learn about French wine. He tells me about a drastic career change that led him to wine and how he survived during the pandemic when his tasting room was closed. Plus, Erwan opens my eyes about the wine regions of Beaujolais, Bordeaux, and Gigondas, as well as the popularity of natural wines. Okay, I'm ready for a glass or two, so let's drink.
Destination Eat Drink.
Erwan Leo from The Secret Wine Door. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. It's great to talk to you about wine today.
Yeah, thank you. No, great to talk to you, Brent.
You know, you didn't start out in your life as a wine expert. You weren't born a wine expert, and you didn't start out owning a wine shop. What was your career originally when you first finished school?
Yeah, no, indeed. It was a big shift for me in terms of career. I used to study, in my studies, I studied logistics. I did a master in supply chain management. And then I started my first job working for Adidas, the shoe company. I was working in the production of making the jerseys for Adidas. I did that for 3 years. I was based in Amsterdam at that time, but that was my previous life. And after 3 years working in it, I just say, I'm done with this life. I just want to switch to do something in the wine world. And this is how it started. And that was, when did I quit? I quit maybe about 6 years ago. And I started Secret Wine Door about 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. And then we got hit with the pandemic. How'd you do during the pandemic? People still want to drink wine, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it was totally a different kind of business that I had at that time. I mean, for me, it's mainly focused on wine tasting that I do in Paris. And of course, everything closed down. So my wine tasting room was closed for about a year and a half or something like that. Because, I mean, it opened, closed, but since not many people were traveling, and for me, it's mainly people traveling coming to my shop, it was a big impact for me. So then I shifted to doing mainly, shipping to different countries, shipping wines and trying to do online tastings. I mean, like everyone, I would say, trying to do different stuff and see what works and what I'm happy about doing. But yeah, it was clearly a different kind of business and different kind of activity I was doing during the pandemic.
Your expertise in logistics probably helped out with that part of the business.
To be fair, I did enjoy it. Even my wife always say, "Stop doing Excel, and I'm done with you talking about like shipping costs and all of that." But I did kind of enjoy it, to be fair.
So you mentioned that a big part of your business at the Secret Wine Door is doing these tastings, these experiences, these events. And I think that kind of makes you different than most wine shops. I mean, a regular wine shop, we walk in and maybe we'll taste a wine. Maybe they'll have someone from a vineyard there doing tastings, or maybe they're just opening a bottle to sample, but it's not the main part of the business. The main part of the business is you walk in, you buy a bottle of wine, and you go home and you open it. Tell me a little bit about these tasting experiences that you have.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, for me, it's the other way around. It's mainly focused on doing wine tasting. I'm actually not even a normal wine shop. It's only the people that come to my tasting that can buy my wines. And basically I do only tasting. So I have 2 wine tastings a day. It's a maximum of 12 people per tasting. And it's usually people that don't know each other. So sometimes I have like 2 Americans, 2 Australians, 2 British, 2 French. I mean, people from different nationalities. And I have the booking online, and people have to book in to come in. And we take 5 wines, I pair those together with 5 cheeses. And the idea, it's more about like having a conversation as if, not friends, but it's more a conversation of how to handle wine at home. How do we handle wine in France compared to your home countries, which is very different because we do it regional compared to many countries do it by grapes. So I just kind of open the mindset of the people on how French wine works. And so that when they come out of my shop, they understand when they go to the restaurant, they feel quite confident in ordering wine. When they go back home also on when should you open a bottle of wine? How should you store it? What temperature? Why do you use decanters? More practical stuff, more than in-depth, oil and things like that. It's really about practical stuff and having a good time for 2 hours. Like people that come usually are on holiday and they're just here to have a good time. So it's more relaxed and very intimate space. And at the end of the tasting, of course, they can buy the wines they tasted, but also have other wines in the back. But yeah, I didn't really want to be a wine shop for 2 main reasons. Because for me, first, so I think because of my previous life as well, I used to have an office job and working like 9 to 6, being there every day, certain days. And I didn't like that commitment. And if you have a wine shop, it's even worse because you have to work on Saturdays, sometimes on Sundays, you have to work for Christmas, you have to work. And for me, now that I have a family, that's kind of things commitments I don't want to have. And also, it's just so much more fun. It's just so much more fun discussing with people of different nationalities. And just, I like that, teaching part of the people learning stuff. And it's something that suits more my personality. And yeah, I just wanted to do that different angle that seems to work out so far. So I'm very happy about it.
You know, I think we're kind of the same in that way, because with my podcast and with my travel blog, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it, is that you get to talk to all these different people who come in to do your tastings. With this podcast, I get to talk to different people every day, all kinds of different people from all around the world. I'm in Portugal today. You're in France. Maybe tomorrow I'll talk to someone from Thailand or from Australia. And I find that very invigorating and very enlivening, because it's a different viewpoint every time I click on the Zoom or I meet someone in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You never know what's going to happen. And that's what I enjoy the most. I totally agree with you.
You know, you mentioned the storage of wine, which I think is a really important aspect of it, because you got a lot of folks who are putting wine in their kitchen, and it might be near their stove, which is hot environment. And I think these practical tips that you talk about are very important. One thing that always drives me crazy is when I go out to a restaurant or a bar, and if my girlfriend gets a glass of white wine, it comes and I can tell before I even put the glass to my lips that it's far too cold, because I can see the condensation along the glass. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to spend 10 minutes with this cupped in my hand to try to get my body heat to transfer to this wine, to warm it up at least a few degrees to make it palatable.
Absolutely. Yeah. This all the other way around, the red being way too warm, thinking you should store it at room temperature, which is not true. I mean, room temperature was right maybe 300 years ago when your walls were very thick, but nowadays room temperature is not right. So absolutely. Yeah. Those are the kind of things. And this is exactly the kind of practical thing. So in terms of storage, it should be indeed away from natural light and artificial light. It should be away from vibrations as well. It should have a constant coldish temperature. In reality, it should be about like 12 degrees Celsius for storage, so about 55 Fahrenheit. Like indeed in the kitchen, that's not right. You're never going to be able to store your wine right. Or some people keep it above the washing machine, for example. There is nothing worse than that, with the heat, with the vibration.
Heat and vibration.
So like those are the kind of things I say, be careful with those things. I mean, if you buy some nice bottles of wine, for me, I say, if you start investing in buying nice wine bottles, your first purchase should be either have a nice storage room or buy a wine cooler. I don't know how you call it, to store your wine properly. And once you figure out how to store your wine properly, then start buying some nice wines, but don't do it the other way around.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the wine regions of France, because Erwan, you mentioned that France is a little bit different in that you define your wines by region rather than by grape. So in the United States, we would say this is a Cabernet, this is a Merlot. In France, it's different. It's defined by these different regions. So let's talk about some of these regions. And the first one I want to ask you about is just throw this question up to you. What do you think is the most underrated wine region of France?
There is quite a few. Yeah, there's quite a few. So to your first point that you were saying, indeed, for us, it's per regions, and each of the regions grow certain grapes. So for example, if you know you like Pinot Noir back home in the US, in France, you should ask for a red Burgundy. There is other regions that does Pinot Noir, but this is the main region that does Pinot Noir, and you know you're going to get your Pinot Noir. If you ask for a Pinot Noir in a restaurant in France, most people will not understand what you're saying. If you go to a random bistros, they would just look at you and like, what are you saying? So just to for the fact that for us, we're by region. And right now, I mean, there is quite a few. The one I have in mind, it is growing a bit. It's more the Beaujolais region, I would say. Everybody talks about Burgundy and Beaujolais. I see more and more interest towards it, but I still think it's very underrated. And I'm quite convinced that in the next few years, it's going to be one of the next biggest regions that is going to sell the most. It's still extremely accessible. You can get incredible wines for amazing value for money. And for me, Beaujolais, which grows Gamay grapes mainly, which is slightly lighter than Pinot Noir. But if you're looking for very light red like Pinot Noirs and don't want to break the bank, Beaujolais is clearly the region to go for.
I have to admit, I don't know a lot about Beaujolais other than, and maybe this isn't even true anymore. Beaujolais is typically a very young wine. Is that still the fact?
No, so that's the thing, right? That's in Beaujolais, you have kind of two types of wine. You have the Beaujolais Nouveau, which I think that's the one you're mentioning, that it's a new young wine that releases on the third Thursday of November. It's kind of a big marketing campaign in France and towards the world as well. In Japan, it's massive. In the US, it falls just before Thanksgiving, so it's also quite big. And those are the young wines, which they're not necessarily looking, at least in the past, they're not necessarily looking for quality, but much more of quantity. And it's really a big marketing thing behind it. And lots of people are going to try it. They're going to say, no, that's not my palate. But there is all the older wines from Beaujolais, which kind of suffers, I would say, from the fame of the Beaujolais Nouveau. Those wines that I'm mentioning, the normal Beaujolais or Cru du Beaujolais, they take about a year to make. They're not that young. They can be kept actually for many years as well. And those are incredible wines. But since they suffer a bit from the fame of that Beaujolais Nouveau that I was saying that has strong marketing, those people, they cannot increase too much their prices. And therefore, you get an incredible value for money. For me, when you look for Beaujolais, what I like to look for is more, not necessarily the Beaujolais village, but more the Cru du Beaujolais, which are 10 small villages, which are the highest class Beaujolais, like Morgon, Moulin-Vent, Brouilly. Those are the villages that make top quality wines for, honestly, 15, 20 euros. You get dollars, you get incredible value for money.
That's going to have me do a whole new exploration of this region, Erwan, because
absolutely,
when I first started getting into wine decades ago, I was drinking the Beaujolais Nouveau, and frankly, I didn't really care for it that much. And it kind of I thought, oh, well, this is what Beaujolais is, and I don't like it, so I'm going to explore other regions. Now that you've opened this door for me, this secret wine door, I'm going to be trying this more often. Thanks for that.
Yeah, it's you, and it's 95% of all the people. Even like when you're part of those, there's the Cru du Beaujolais that I was saying, those 10 villages. Actually, on the label, you don't even have to mention Beaujolais on the label. And if you ask many French people, to be fair, or many foreigners, you tell them, do you want to try Beaujolais? They're going to say, no, I don't care too much for it. Then you say, do you want to try Moulin-Vent, which is a village of Beaujolais that people don't know that's a village, because on the bottle it doesn't say Beaujolais. They say, oh, I love that wine. This is incredible. And they don't know that behind it is a Beaujolais that they're drinking in reality.
Fantastic. A few years ago, we went to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and of course, I love these wines, but my wallet always can't afford them. So that's why I'll often look for wines from Gigondas. And that's the adjacent region to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And I'm just wondering what your opinion is of this region.
It's funny you mentioned Gigondas is the one I'm currently serving actually in my tasting room right now when I will talk about the Rhone Valley. So Rhone Valley in general, you have two main sub-regions. You have the north of the Rhone, which is 100% Shiraz, or Syrah. In France, we say Syrah. And the southern Rhone, where Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas are located, which are mainly blends. And in general, it's a blend of, it's a GSM blend, we call it, which is a Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre. There is other grapes, but those are the main grapes. And you're right, Châteauneuf-du-Pape is the wine that is probably the most famous appellation from the southern Rhone and the one that exports the most. And in general, absolutely the most expensive as well. And since we export so much, since that name is so strong, of course, there is some marketing behind it and they can increase their prices for it. And as you said, I'm glad you mentioned Gigondas. Those are kind of the underrated appellations, which not many people know about those cities, which are literally 20 minutes away from Châteauneuf-du-Pape. I'm thinking of Gigondas, Vaqueras. And for half the price, you get an incredible value for money as well. You pay half the price because it's not as famous. Those are very elegant, but very concentrated with strong red fruits, black fruit flavors, some spiciness to it, but still retain the acidity because you have a bit of a hill over there. So it's Gigondas is it's like Beaujolais. Beaujolais is underrated. Gigondas is one of those cities that is underrated. Getting now on the radar because Châteauneuf-du-Pape is getting too expensive, but it's clearly a very good appellation to go for.
You know, and when we say underrated, like Gigondas and Beaujolais, often that translates into good value for your money, which is why I really like them. You know, you use the word elegant when you describe Gigondas, and I think that's a perfect word. And when I have, I live in Portugal now, and when I have a lot of Portuguese wines, I describe them, not all, but many of them as rustic. Because they're different in the way that they're produced and the grapes that are grown, and in some ways, I think the higher end of the Portuguese wine community isn't as developed as it is in places like France and maybe Italy. I'm wondering, do you ever taste Portuguese wines, and what's your opinion?
Yeah, some of them sometimes. It's not that often, to be honest, because, for me, I would say it's a shame to say, but 95%, if not more percent of the wines I drink is French wines, then some Spanish, Italian, and some Portuguese. For me, Portuguese wine, very good wines, incredible value for money. It's like Spain, Portugal. The money that you spend for good quality wine, it's almost ridiculous. And I almost wonder sometimes how do they manage to have such prices? And as you said, I think the rustic is the right term. Also, it's warmer climate, but they get the influence from the sea, which give a cooling influence. So now the rustic, bold, stronger reds, the whites, depends on the whites. Some have higher acidity than others. But the very good wines for me, Portuguese wines, I think they make high quality wines. They have the history of it. I'm more used to French wines, to be honest, but no, I think Portuguese it's one of those, countries that people don't think about. When you talk about Europe, everybody talks about France, Spain, Italy, and nobody really talks about Portugal. And therefore, again, it seems to be the theme of today's podcast, but again, another very good value for money wine, Portuguese. It's one up there.
I'll tell you, when I go into the shops and I look at these bottles of wine and I compare the prices, I'm like, how can they even afford to do this? I look at the price and I say, does that even cover the cost of the bottle and the cork? It's so inexpensive. Yeah. One other region I'd like to talk about is another region that I visited, which is Bordeaux. And this is probably maybe the second most famous wine region. Someone would maybe say the most famous wine region in France. Yeah. Take me through Bordeaux a little bit, what your opinion is and what some of your favorites are.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now, Bordeaux, so it's a white region. Bordeaux is in the southwest of France. And it's, in general, it's blends that you're going to find. So in Bordeaux, you have two main grapes in general, I would say. So there is 5 red grapes, which are mainly found, but 2 main ones, which is Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon. And then you have 3 minor grapes, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot and Malbec, even though Cabernet Franc is a bit more important. And then on Bordeaux, what's very important to know is that there is the left bank and the right bank. So there is 2 sides of Bordeaux, depending on where you're located, on which side of the river you're located. If you're on the left bank, which is actually near the sea, this is going to be wines which are in general more Cabernet Sauvignon driven, so bolder, stronger reds. Whereas if you go to the right bank, where, for example, Saint-Émilion is located, or Pomerol, those are more Merlot dominated. In Bordeaux, it's mainly blends that you're going to find, which not many people know. Again, in my tasting, I get many people saying, I hate blends. My favorite wine is Bordeaux. I say, well, you don't mind blends because Bordeaux is usually a blend that you're going to find. It's just either you have a majority of Cabernet Sauvignon or a majority of Merlot. I really enjoy both sides, to be fair. For me, if you ask me on the right bank, of course, Pomerol or Saint-Émilion, those Saint-Émilion Grand Cru. And I think Bordeaux was quite pricey maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, which used to be the main French region that people were looking for. And nowadays, Bordeaux is quite in a crisis in the past few years because the attention of worldwide wine, the attention of people worldwide went more towards Burgundy, making Bordeaux less important. And therefore, they produce so much wine that they struggle to sell in some parts that they don't increase too much the prices, and you get to find very good wines for good money as well in Bordeaux.
You know, I see a lot about natural wines, and when I was kind of doing a hobby winemaking, this was the only wine that we would make. We would never add commercial yeast to our wine. We would just ferment it and see what would happen, with the yeast, the natural yeasts. And now natural wines in the past few years have gained incredible popularity. What do you attribute this sudden surge in natural wines to?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because indeed everybody says natural wine is quite new. No, it's not new, actually. We're just going back to how we were doing things in the past in reality. It's that newer movement. It's true that I would say it's more a trendier thing right now that I would say the younger generation are more attracted to because it's also related to the environment, right? It's all about natural wines. Basically, it's about growing your grapes organically, so not adding anything in the vineyards, but also not adding anything in your wine to have kind of the purest wine possible. And in France, it's clearly growing. I would say worldwide, we see those more in the cooler cities. I don't know, I say that the bigger cities you see in Los Angeles, maybe New York, you see in Paris, a lot in the northern European countries. I think that's the right way of doing wines, to be fair. This is where we should go back. However, today it's still a trend. And when it's a trend, lots of producers or lots of places, they do it not necessarily because they believe in the natural wine production, but much more they see an economical opportunity. They see people buying those for more money. So they say, maybe I should go towards this. And nowadays in natural wines, you can really find all type of wines. Like, lots of people make their opinion by trying one natural wine that they bought in a supermarket because it says natural wine. They didn't like it and they said natural wines never again. Well, it's not fair to say that. Like, if you buy those, what's good to do, I would say, is to buy those in specialized shop or specialized restaurant. I know which producer works well, which one doesn't, like to know much more the story of the producer and how come they came to the natural wine. I think this is more important. And you find those incredible wines. And when we talk about terroir, I don't know if you heard that word before, but about like tasting really the soil and tasting where we're located. I mean, there is nothing that could be more purest than a natural wine to really taste the place where you're located, I would say. But if you buy those, be careful and go in the right places.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing about natural wine is that on a commercial scale, folks want to have consistency. Like even from year to year, they want to go and they find a wine that they like and they go and they pick it. And then the next year they go and they pick it again. They want that same flavor, that same taste profile. And with natural wine, that's nearly impossible to do because there will be so much variation from year to year, depending on all of these, depending on all of these factors, environmental and rainfall and all these things that happen with wines. So I think that's a really big issue that people need to understand and know that, one bottle to the next bottle could be quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, but I think it's because it's kind of new. I would say that movement started maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe a bit more than that, but like really started becoming big. So it's newer and people are starting to say, I like that, but not going much further. I think with time, people will get educated to us. It's part of education. and just starting to understand that what matters is not necessarily the wine, it's more what happened that year climate wise. And this is why your wine has a soul. It's because it speaks words on what kind of climate you had that year. And you can really identify one that has a higher acidity. It's usually a wine which were from a cooler climate and it was more rainfall. And like, you can tell a story, which is very interesting, but people need that education. It's going to come. I'm quite hopeful with time it's going to come. The quality of the natural wine is going to increase as well. And it's, I think it's the direction in which it's going. It's just, it takes a bit of time and some people want to go straight in there without, lacking that, knowledge, I would say.
Yeah. If people want to hear a story, and they want to try the purest expression of the grape and of the land, I think natural wine is definitely the way to go.
Natural or biodynamics. I mean, it doesn't have to be natural, right? There is biodynamics, there is other stuff, because natural wine in reality, nowadays, there is not really a label that states, if you do natural wine, this is exactly what you need to do, right? It's still finding itself in that market of natural wine, I would say. It's not really fully defined, which is why many producers goes that way. And you find really different kind of natural wines. But, going with the less, which is the less additives, and this is clearly the road to go for sure.
What about orange wine? I'm seeing that pop up on more labels these days. Of course, this is not made with oranges. It refers to the color. Talk a little bit about orange wine, if you could.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, indeed. I think orange wines came almost together with natural wines, I would say, kind of the popularity. Because usually orange wine producers are natural wine producers. It goes together, kind of, even though it doesn't have to, but in general, that's what happens. And again, orange wine, we say it's quite new. No, we used to make orange wine thousands of years ago. It's just we stopped somehow in the process. Don't ask me why. Because actually it's, to make white wine, we use white grapes. We just don't put the skins in contact. To make red wine, we use red grapes, of course. But if you ever press a red grape, you can see it's actually white color. So to make a red wine red, we throw the skins in the juice, and that's going to color your wine red. Is going to add the tannins, that feeling of dryness on your palate. So usually the skin maceration of the grapes is about 2-3 weeks. To make rosé, in general, it's red grapes with just less skin contact of just a few hours. Orange wine is the same as the red wine process, but with the white grapes. So for white wine, we just press the grapes. For orange wine, we add the white skins, which are usually quite orangey, in the juice for a few days or sometimes for a few months to add usually that color to the wine. And it's going to add a bit of tannin. It's going to add a bit more structure and more powerfulness in your white and therefore orange wine in that case.
You know, the first time I made wine, this is going back decades, the first time I made white wine, I made it just like the red. I left the skins in contact with the juice. And when I bottled it, I was like, oh, what's this strange color? I must have done something wrong. But it wasn't until later that I realized I was actually making orange wine.
Yeah, you might have been the one bringing it back, maybe then.
Yeah, right. with my 12 bottles that I got.
Yeah. Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Erwan, before I let you go, you know, you live in Paris. You're a Parisian, and I would love for you to be able to share a couple of recommendations with the audience about things to do in Paris. Everyone knows about the big blockbuster places to go, but, you know, your place is called the Secret Wine Door, so maybe some under-the-radar recommendations that you might have for folks.
Yeah, sure. Like restaurants or things to do in Paris, for sure, yeah. I mean, places for me, a place I really enjoy going, for example, for lunch or dinner. It's in the 14th arrondissement. It's called Le Petit Sommelier, which is, I think the guy that owns it, Pierre Villain, he was second best sommelier in France in 2022 or 2023. His wine list is an incredible wine list that he has. It's extremely wide, and you can find the most incredible wine, the most famous, but also the most niche wines that you can find. An incredible wine list, and the food is really high quality. I call it mama's food, kind of like it's just perfect French food, well done, well executed. And me as a French person, I can tell you it's good French food that you eat there. Actually, whenever I have friends visiting, I always bring them over there, Le Petit Sommelier. in the 14th. And otherwise, a very French thing to do actually for us starting May, which is kind of now until October. Lots of people after work, what they do, they usually buy a bottle of wine in the shop, and then they buy some charcuterie, some cheese. Instead of going to the bar, lots of people gather near the Seine River. I would say the tourists, they all sit near the Eiffel Tower. French people sit more near the river, near Pont-Neuf. And everybody starts sitting there from 6 p.m. to 11:30 until until sunset. And it's just a very nice vibe. It's just informal. Everybody sees people from different groups bring their own friends. So sometimes you're 5, sometimes you're 20, sometimes just people can add up. Whereas when in a bar, you can't really do it because it's very small spaces in France. And it's just a very nice, enjoyable evening, sitting there by the river, seeing the boat pass by, and just meeting people just in the river, nearby the river. It's just a nice thing to do. I would say for sure. I recommend doing those things for me.
Great recommendations. Well, Erwan Leo from The Secret Wine Door, thank you so much for being on Destination Eat Drink. We'll have a link to The Secret Wine Door in the show notes so that folks can get in touch with you when they're in Paris and do a wine tasting and taste some cheese with it. And, this has just been an eye-opening conversation about French wine and about what we really need to look for when we're shopping for bottles and for when we go to France. So thanks so much for being on the show. This has been a great conversation and great talking to you.
Yeah, same. Thank you for inviting me. And it was really a big pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's Erwan Leo from The Secret Wine Door. You can connect with him at secretwinedoor.com. And I've got a link in the show notes as well. Erwan gave me so much information, and I'm definitely going to be trying some Beaujolais Cru, but I was just remembering something about orange wine because, of course, like Erwan said, orange wine isn't made with oranges, except when you go to Andalusia in Spain. They have something called orange wine in Seville that's made with white wine, sugar, and macerated oranges and orange peel. It's something you got to try when you go to Seville. I even did a video with it, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, it's eggs preserved in gelatin, gourmet picnics, and a truffle risotto epiphany as we head back to France and Montmartre in Paris. Don't miss that. Until then, you can scratch your food and travel itch at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a complete foodie travel guide to the city of Guimarães, Portugal. It's a place not on many people's travel radar, but it's a gorgeous city, and everyone who visits falls in love with the city. You can read that by going to destinationeatdrink.com and clicking on Portugal destinations and Guimarães. I also have a new video out. It's about the Spanish city of Bilbao. We visit the incredible Guggenheim Museum and, of course, have some great food along the way. You can see that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.